This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Yeah. Today I'm going to explain about some more basics of the Mulesoft. Okay. First I'll explain the API, what is API, and then I'll explain the what is web services and all other remaining basics. Yeah. First, API stands for Application Programming Interface. Okay. You just heard this word in all the languages. Java is an API, Angular is an API. All other languages and all other programming languages are API. What is the actual meaning of API? Forget about the Mulesoft and forget about the Mulesoft and Mulesoft. In generally, what is the API? Whenever, suppose if you attend the product-based companies, they will ask all these basics. What is the difference between API and web services? What is API? Because they will expect the subject from you, not from the this programs and these all the things. But you have to understand what is the basics. What is API? What is web services? That is the reason I'm explaining all this talk, all these concepts. If you understand that what is API, and if suppose if you attend the product based companies, if they will ask what is API, what you have to tell? If you tell what is API means application programming interface means, that is the abbreviation, that is not the definition. Okay, now I'll tell you the what is the definition. Okay, example, you heard this word Java is an API, Spring is an API, okay, .NET is an API, PHP is an API. API means what? API is nothing but the information that is used to communicate with the software component. Once again, I'm telling, general meaning of API means API is nothing but a information that is used to communicate with the software component. Okay. One example I'll tell you, and then I'll move on to our Mulesoft. Java is an API. Example I'm telling. API definition example I'm telling. Java is an API means what? If you want to create the Java program, if you want to create the Java program, first you have to understand what is the information, what is the classes available in Java, what is the methods available in Java, and what is the variables and constants available in Java. If you understand all these things, you can easily develop the program. Because okay, if you Google the Java is an API, Java API, if you Google out, you will get a URLs. In that URL, you will get all the documentation of the Java. The documentation of Java is called as an API. It means API is nothing but information. The Java is an API means the Java API will contain all the Java information. If you know that information, you can easily create the Java program. That is the actual meaning of API. API is nothing but the information that is used to communicate with the software component. Coming to our Mulesoft, what is the actual definition of Mule? Yeah. In our Mulesoft, we are going to create the APIs. In your terminology, we are going to create the programs and application. We are calling as the programs and application. But coming to Mulesoft, we are calling as the APIs. Here we are going to create as API. The project is nothing but API. Because if you are going to create API means you are going to indirectly you are creating a project. Here you are in the whole Mulesoft you are going to create the APIs. Okay, what is the meaning of API in Mulesoft? If you want to create an API, you should define the three things. You should define the three in Mulesoft perspective. I'm telling whatever definition I have explained above, that is a generic definition of API. API is nothing but information that is used to communicate with the software component. That is a generic definition of the API. Coming to Mulesoft perspective, the API definition means in your Mulesoft terminology, if you want to create a API, you should define the three things. What is that? I'll tell you. If you understand this definition, you can easily create the API because whatever I am explaining here, the same thing I'll explain practically. You see here. Suppose once I started the Mule program, I'll create a API. If you want to create an API, you should define the three things. If you know these three things, you can easily create the API. What is the three things? First one is the operation. Second one is the input. The third one is the output. What is this operation? What is this input? What is this output? I'll tell you now. Try to understand clearly. If you understand this definition, okay, you can easily create the APIs. Yeah. I'm taking one scenario. To explain the API definition. Assume that we have the two applications is available. One is client application. Client application means whoever is sending the request, that application is called as the client application. This application is called as the server application. Okay. You have a requirement. Okay. Before going to explain about the Mule API definition, I'm just explaining the one scenario. That scenario is, okay, I want to get the information from the server mission to client mission. In the server mission, in the server mission contains the employee information, student information, customer information. Okay. Like this, the server mission contains all this information. I want to retrieve the employee information. It means the client is asking the server to provide the employee information. Excuse me. Now, the server mission will provide this employee data. Okay. This is the scenario. Now, I'll compare our definition with this scenario. Okay. Suppose if you want to create an API for this scenario, okay, the scenario means what? Client is sending the request, server is giving the data. Okay. Now you want to create an API. What is that API? Your API is connecting to server. The server machine is providing the data. If you want to create an API in Mulesoft for this requirement, okay, you have to define the three things. Operations means what? What to call. What is the meaning of operation? What to call. What operation is client is performing here? Client can perform the get operation. Get means retrieving the data. Client can perform the insert operation. Client is sending the data means we can insert the data into server machine, and the client can update it. The client can delete it. Like this, all these operations is available. For this example, what operation is client is performing? Getting data. Getting data means whenever the client is sending, server will give the data. Operations means what to call, what operations you are performing, what calls you are performing, getting the data or retrieving the data you are performing. That is about the first one. Okay. Second one is what to send with a call. Input means what to send with a call. You are performing this operation, getting operation, but you have to specify the input, right? If you doesn't specify any input, what response will server will return? Because server contains the n number of data. Okay, along with your operation, you have to specify the input. Input means what? What to send with the call. This is the input I'm specifying. EMP means whenever you send the request, okay, server will check what is the operation getting. It means it will give you the data. And what is the input? EMP. Next, what the server will do? Server will find the EMP data and server will return that data. Output means what you are sending with a call. Okay. Input means what to send with a call. Output means what you are getting with from the call. What is returning from the call. What is returning from the call? If you know this information, you can easily create the program. Whenever you are going to create an API, first you have to know these three things: operation, input, output. If you know this information, you can easily create the API. That is what the definition I told you, right? API is nothing but the information that is used to communicate with the software component. Okay. If you have this information, you can easily communicate with the server machine. You can easily create the program. That is about the API definition. Guys, this is the basics I'm telling. Okay. while creating the RESTful API, I'll tell you how we are creating this API. The generic definition, generic basic definition of the API, I'm explaining here. Okay. Whenever whenever in any I'm sorry. Okay. In interview, if someone is asking what is API, don't say the single line application programming interface. You have to explain all these things because this is especially for the product-based companies. Okay. If you explain like this, okay, that guy will understand. You have the knowledge beyond. You have the basic knowledge of the concept. You have the basic. You have the knowledge the beyond in the concept. You have. Okay, they will decide like that. Okay, once again, I'm telling the API is nothing but application programming interface. The definition of the API means is the API is nothing but information that is used to communicate with the software component. If you have to create the API, you have to define these three things: operation, input, output. Operation means what to call. Input means what to send with a call. Output means what is returning from the call. Once you started the real-time project, if you want to start the API, you need this information. Before going to start the development, you need this information. Okay, if you are involving in the analysis call from this call, okay, you have to get this information from the source team and the destination team. Okay, how can we get it? How we practically it will done? Okay, once I started the first chapter, I'll anyone have any doubt? This definition? Okay. This is about the API. Now I'll tell you the web service. What is web service? These all are the basics. Once again, I'm telling a number of times. I'm telling. Okay, I think okay, you are aware of the web service. Anyone tell me what is web service? You heard this word, right? Web service. What is web service? Am I audible?
A service which is publishing via web.
Okay. Yeah, web service is nothing but a method of communication. The definition of the web service I'm telling. Web service is nothing but a method of communication that exchange the data between the two systems over the internet is called web service. It means if you want to exchange the information between the two systems, you need the internet. Okay, in the premises of internet only, with the help of internet only, you are exchanging the data between the two systems. That is called as a web service. Web service means a method of communication that is used to exchange the data between the two systems over internet is called as a web service. You have the two types of web services. Even have any idea? So web services, RESTful web services.
RESTful services.
Okay. In our Mulesoft, we are going to create as a RESTful web services. Almost all we are going to create as a RESTful web services. Okay. Before explaining about the RESTful web services, I just explained the few lines about the SOAP web services. Okay. We have the two types of web services. SOAP web services mean, for example, you have a requirement. Okay, consider the previous requirement. Okay, I'm getting the data from the client server mission to client mission. If you want to implement that project, if you want to implement that scenario, you can implement that scenario using the SOAP web services and RESTful web services also. Either of the approaches you can follow, but the two approaches are different. When you will go for the SOAP web services and when you will go for the RESTful web services, I'll tell you now. SOAP web services is nothing but it is like as a protocol. It will only accept the XML data. It means suppose you have implemented any project, if you have developed any project in SOAP web services, okay, you can exchange the data between the systems in the form of XML data only. Okay, other than XML, you cannot exchange it. It means SOAP web service always supports the XML format only. always support the. It means if you want to publish the data, if you want to send the data, or if you want to receive the data, if you want to perform these operations, the data should be in XML format. Okay. Suppose if you want to publish the data in other format, not in XML, JSON data, that you cannot perform this operation. That you cannot perform this. That logic you cannot perform in SOAP web services. SOAP web services will only support the XML format only. Coming to RESTful web services, I'll tell you the definition of the RESTful web services. First, I'll tell you the difference. RESTful web service supports all the data types. It means like XML, JSON, CSV. Like this, it will support all the data types. It means if you have implemented any requirement using the RESTful web services, you can exchange the data between the two systems. You can exchange the data between the two systems in all the formats. Okay, I'll tell you the pictorial representation. Assume that what is the definition of the web services? A web service is nothing but a method of communication that is used to exchange between the two systems over internet is called as a web service. Consider one scenario. Okay, I want to exchange the data between the two systems. This is a client system. This is a server system. So you are going to exchange the system. Here, in case of SOAP web services, this exchange exchange the data between these two systems will only support the XML format. In case of SOAP web services, we have implemented this business logic using the SOAP web services. It will only support the XML data. It means the client can receive or send the data in XML format, or server can receive or send the data in the XML format. Suppose if you have implemented this business logic using the RESTful web services, not in so here it will support all the data types. It means it will support all the data types. It means suppose if you have implemented this business logic, okay, you want to send the data from the client mission to server mission or server mission to client mission, you can use your own data type. It means it is the XML or CSV or whatever data you want to use it, you can use it. Here no restrictions for the data types in case of RESTful web services. In case of SOAP web services, it will only support the XML data. Next, the next difference I'll tell you. The RESTful web services will only work based on the HTTP protocol. HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Yesterday I explained you, right, what is the definition of the protocol. Protocol is nothing but a set of rules that is used for the communication between the systems. It means if you want to interact with the any systems, you need the protocol. Suppose if you are logging any ICICI bank or Facebook, okay, if you observe the website https://www.facebook.com and www.icici.com, what is that HTTPS? That is a protocol. That is nothing but set of rules. Using that protocol only, your client mission is trying to connect with your server mission. That is a set of protocol. Here, if you have implemented any business logic in the RESTful web services, that RESTful web service will only work on the HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Okay, because that based on the HTTP protocol only, RESTful web services will work. Now I'll tell you the definition of the RESTful web services. Yeah, the definition of the RESTful web services is the definition of the RESTful web. In our Mulesoft, we are going to create a RESTful web services. Now I'm telling you the definition of the RESTful web services. The definition of the RESTful web service means that exchanging the data between the two systems, okay, using the standard HTTP protocol is called as the RESTful web services. REST stands for representational state transfer. REST stands for representational state transfer. Okay. The definition of the RESTful web service means RESTful web service is the architectural style. RESTful web service is nothing but an architectural style. RESTful web service is an architectural style. This architectural style can be used to exchange the data between the two resources over a standard HTTP protocol. It means the two systems are exchanging the data between the two systems are exchanging the data between the two systems using the standard HTTP protocol is called as the RESTful web services. RESTful web service is an architectural style. REST stands for representational state transfer. Okay, if you want to create a RESTful web services, okay, you need the HTTP protocol. It means RESTful web service will only work on the HTTP protocol. That is the reason if you want to create the RESTful web services, the RESTful web service will need the HTTP protocol. This HTTP protocol has some methods. This HTTP protocol has some inbuilt method. This HTTP protocol, this is a protocol. This protocol has inbuilt some has by default. This protocol has some methods. Using that method, we can create the RESTful web services. Not only in Mulesoft, in generally we are using this RESTful web service in all the languages. If you want to create the RESTful web services, you need the HTTP protocol, HTTP or HTTPS. HTTP means non-secure protocol. HTTPS means secure protocol. Okay, you need this protocol. This protocol has some method. Using this method, we can create the RESTful web services. What is that method? Okay, around we have the 28, 29 methods is there. Okay, you no need to by heart that method. I'll tell you the few methods that will be enough because mostly we can use that method only. Okay, using these methods only, we are going to create the RESTful web services in our Mulesoft. Methods is get method, post method, put method, patch method, delete. Like this, we have so many methods in there. I'm explaining the only the two of the methods I'm explaining. Mostly we can use these methods only in our Mulesoft. Okay. If you want to create any RESTful API, based on these methods only, you can create the RESTful web service. It means whenever you will get a requirement, you have to choose which method is suitable for your project. Suppose you got a requirement from the client. Okay. Once you understand the concept, you have to understand, you have to analysis and you have to pick this method, which method is suitable for your project, which method is suitable for your requirement. I'll tell you each method, when you will use this get method and when you will use this post method. I'll explain this. Okay. Once again, I'm telling RESTful web service is nothing but architectural style. These web services will exchange the data between the system using the standard HTTP protocol. This web service will work on the HTTP or HTTPS protocol. If you want to create a RESTful web service, okay, you have to understand what is the HTTP protocol method. Based on this HTTP protocol methods only, we are going to create the RESTful web services. Okay. Now, I'll take the scenarios and I'll explain this method. First, I'll explain the get method. When you will use this get method. Okay. If you understand this one, you can, okay, because in our Mulesoft, we are going to create the RESTful web services only. Please try to understand clearly. If you are not understand this methods important, please let me know. Okay, I'll try to clarify this. First method is, this is used to retrieve the data. Retrieve or getting the data. Okay. Suppose, okay, what is the meaning of this get method? Means when you will use this get method, suppose if you have any requirement, if you want to retrieve or getting the data from the server machine, then you can use the get method. Okay. Coming to our topic. Okay. I'll take you the scenario. Here the client mission is there, server mission is there. Now, for example, this client mission is a, assume that this client mission is a Java web page. Okay. The server mission is a database. Assume that I'm taking an example. Okay, you have the two application. One application is a Java web page, other application is a database. Here, whenever once you open the Java web page, once you click on the button, okay, you are getting the information from the server, and the same information you are trying to displaying on the web page. Okay, that is what the requirement. Now, what you have to do that in this requirement, whenever the client is clicking that button, you have to call the server mission. Server mission will return the data to you. In this requirement, what operations you are performing? You are trying to get the data from the server mission. You are not sending any data. Client mission is not sending the data. Client mission is calling the server, and server mission is returning the data. Here, in this whole scenario, in this whole requirement, what will be the operation? Getting the data. So, if you have any requirement like this, it means if you want to get the data from the any server mission, okay, using the get method, you can create the RESTful web services. For this requirement, if you want to create a RESTful web services, what is the requirement? You are trying to get the data from the client mission to server mission. If you want to create a RESTful web service for this requirement, what you have to do that? Okay, you have to create the RESTful web service using the get method. Why you are using this get method? The importance of the functionality of the get method is used to retrieve or I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, use it to retrieve or getting the data. The second method, okay, when you will use this post method. Okay, before explaining about this post method, what is the importance of this post method? It is used to create the resource. Here, in Mulesoft terminology, okay, I'm calling the data, right? You are trying to get the data, you are trying to, the server mission is returning the data. That data is called as a resource. The data is called as a resource. Resource is nothing but a data. Okay. When you will use this post method is used to create the new resource, not resource, new resource. Used to create the new resource. Okay. What does this mean? Okay. For example, okay, forget about the previous scenario. Come to new scenario. Now you got the requirement from the client. In this requirement, okay, in this requirement, what client is asking? The Java web page. For example, Java web page is the application page. We are trying to fill some application, other application or some application, passport application we are filling. Once you fill all this information, you just click the submit button. Once you click the submit button, what this Java page is doing? The Java page is sending the data to server mission. In the server mission, the data is inserting. Consider this scenario. Understand? Once again, I'm telling. In the Java web page, in this scenario, this is second scenario. In this scenario, what client is asking? Client is asking you to create a Java guys will create it. You will not create it. Okay. Whenever the Java guys will send the data, okay, you are getting the data and you are taking the data and you are trying to insert the data into server mission. If you have any requirement like this, in this scenario, what operation you are performing? You are trying to insert the data into server mission. If you have any requirement like this, you can create the RESTful web services using the post method. Why you are using this post method? This is used to create the new resource. Whenever you are using this post method, this always create the new resource. This always creates the new resource. Once again, I'm telling, okay, in this scenario, client is sending the data, we are in server is accepting the data and server machine is storing the data. Previous scenario, client is asking the data, server is returning the data. That means retrieving or getting the data. In this scenario, post method, client is sending the data. Okay, we are inserting the data into server machine. Why I'm repeating all these things? Mostly in our web services, you are using these two methods. Mostly 90%. Okay, you will get this requirement, get or post. Okay, that's why I'm repeating more number of times. It means when you will use this post method, once you understand the requirement, immediately, suppose if it is a get method, means you are getting the data from the server machine. If it is a post method, means you are sending the data you are inserting into server machine. You just keep this in your mind. If you understand this one, you can easily create the program. Whenever you listen the requirement, immediately you will get an idea. Okay, this method is suitable for my requirement. This method is suitable for my requirement. Okay, that is the reason I'm explaining all these things. Yeah, this is about the post method. Post method is used to create the new resource. The next method, put method. This is similar to post method. The difference is, suppose, consider the previous scenario only. Okay, now I'm sending the data. Okay, server machine is taking this data. If the data is already available, it will update it. If the data is not available, it will create the new resource. If you have any requirement like this, use the get method. Okay. Post method means if you send the 100 times post method, 100 times 100 records will be inserted in the server machine. That will not bother about if the data is already exist or not. But coming to put method, before inserting the data into server machine, first the server machine will check if the data is available or not. If the data is not available, it will it will create the resource. If the data is already available, it will update the data. Okay, this is about the post method. Suppose that I'm telling the scenario with, for example, using the post method, I'm sending the request 100 times. 100 times. What will happen? 100 records will be inserted. 100 resources will be created. Coming to put method. Put method. If you send 100 requests, first time it will create it. First time it will create it. Create the new resource. Data is not available. It will create the new resource. The remaining 99 times it will not create it. It will update the first data. It will update the same data. Okay. If you are using put method, means if you send 100 requests, only one resource will be created. That resources will be created first time, then remaining 99 times it will update the resource. Suppose if you are using post method, okay, that will not bother about if that resource is already available or not. It will blindly create the 100 requests, 100 resources. Okay, the very important interview question: what is the difference between the post and put method? A very important interview question: what is the difference between the post and put method? Post method means post method is used to create the new resource. Put method is used to, if you are using the put method, means it will check the if the data is already available or not. If it's available, it will update it. If the data is not available, it will create it. Okay, that is about the put method. The fourth method is, this is for, it will update the, this is for only updating the resource. Suppose if you are using the update, means it is only for updating the data. Okay, for example, here you are sending the data. Okay, server machine is, consider this scenario. Java web page is sending the data. If the data is available, it will update it. If the data is not available, it will not do anything. That is about the patch method. Patch method is only for the updating the data. Okay, what the patch method will do, if you are using the, suppose if you have implemented any RESTful web services using the patch method, it will only update the resource if the resource is available. If the resource is not available, it will not do any action. It will not perform any action. That is about the patch method. Delete. Delete means, by seeing the name itself, you will understand. If you want to delete any data from the server mission, from the server resources, you can use the delete, but no one will ask you to delete the resources. Delete operation is a very sensitive operation. Okay, no one will ask you to delete this one. Like this, we have this, so many methods is available, but okay, in the document, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. In the documentation, I'm providing all the methods and all the importance of this method. But here, okay, for the programming perspective, this will be enough. Get and post. Mostly we will use get and post. Okay. The rarely we will use put method. Patch and delete. Okay. Mostly 99% will not use that. This is about the RESTful web services. Okay, the RESTful web service is not completed. So far, what I have explained the definition of the RESTful web services, and I have explained the HTTP protocol inbuilt methods. If you have a if you will get an idea of this inbuilt method, you can easily create the RESTful web services. Suppose if you want to create a RESTful web service, first you have to understand what is the importance of this method. Okay, if you understand this method, then you can easily create the RESTful web service. Yeah, this is about the RESTful web service definition. Once you send this one, how this is once you send the request in web service, in RESTful web services, I'm sending using get method or post method or put method or patch method or delete method or operations method, like this trace method. We have so many methods is there. If you send the request, server machine will return the data. How it will return the data, I'll explain. Before going to explain that topic, anyone have any doubts so far? These all are basics. If you understand these basics, your programming will be easy. Anyone have any doubts? Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you that next concept. So far, I have explained how to create the RESTful web service. Same thing I'll explain the practically also. Okay? Now, okay, once you create the RESTful web services, the server machine will take this RESTful web service request and it will return the data. How it will return the data? Yeah. This is also important. Important means that the basic purpose important. Sorry. Okay. Here, so far I am explaining the client mission is sending the request and server is sending the response, right? How the client mission will send the request? Client mission will send the HTTP request. Okay. This will happen in all the browsers. Suppose whenever you are sending the request, HTTP request will be created. HTTP request will be created. How this, once you send this HTTP request, server will read this HTTP request and server will return the HTTP response. Okay, HTTP response server will return the HTTP response. Okay, I just explain. Okay, what will contain this HTTP request? What will contain the HTTP response? HTTP request header and request response. Request body. Means request header means this request will contain. Suppose if you are sending the request https://www.icc.bank.com. Once you send the enter button, HTTP request will be created. Internally, how this HTTP request will be created? If the HTTP request will contain the request header and request body. What will contain this request header? This information. So far I have explained this method, right? HTTP, what is the protocol, what is the method you are using, what is the version, what language you are using. All this information will contain the request header. Request body means, okay, what actually you are sending. It means what is the inputs you are sending, what is the in a resource you are sending. All this information will contain the HTTP request body. Once you send this request, server machine will read the request header, and it will read. Once the server machine will read the request header, server will understand what this request, what is the why the client sent this request, and based on this request header, the server machine will understand, okay, what operation server will perform. Okay, once server machine will read this request and server will process your request, server will return HTTP response. That response again it will contain response header, response body. Again, this response header will contain the what? All the information about the client information and all the information about the response means whatever server is sending the response, that response will be appended to a response body. Why I'm telling all these things? Along with this response, one code will be generated, one numeric code will be generated. That code is called as the status code. Along with this HTTP response, server will return the HTTP response along with the status code. What is the meaning of status code? The status code is called as the HTTP status code. HTTP status code. What is the status code? One numeric code will be generated. Based on the numeric code, you will understand how server is processing your request, how the request is performed on the server side. Okay, that numeric code is called as the HTTP status code. Along with the response, the status code will be returned. The response means what? Suppose if you are asking the employee data, and suppose if you are asking employee data will return it. Along with this employee data, server machine will return the numeric code. That numeric code is called as the status code. This status code is called as the HTTP status code. Okay. We have so many status codes in there. I'll explain a few of the status codes, and I have already provided all the status codes in the documentation. But here I'll tell you the few of the status code. What is the status code? The numeric code. Why this server is returning the status code? Based on the status code, server will return the server will. Okay, you will understand what the server is doing your request whenever you send the request. Okay, the status code I'm telling you. First status code means 200. Okay, the 200 means suppose along with your response, server is returning the 200 status code, 200 numeric code. What is the meaning of 200? Okay, request succeeded. It means here, understand, you are sending the request to server machine. Server machine is server machine taking your request, and server is processing your request. After that, server is returning the response. It means your request is successfully performed. Your request is successfully processed here. In that scenario, server will return the 200 status code along with the response. So by seeing the 200 status code, you will understand, okay, my request is success. My request is succeeded. Okay, that you can understand it. And next status code is 201. 201 status code means whenever you are creating any new resource, it means client is sending the data and server machine is successfully accepted the data and server machine is successfully inserted the data. That time server machine will return the 201 status code. 201 status code means created new resource. Anyone tell me for which method you will get the status code? 201 status code means whenever you are trying to insert any data into the server machine, your resource is successfully inserted into the server machine will return the 201 status code. In which scenario you will get the 201 status code? For which method? Post method. Anyone tell me for which method you will get the 200 status code? Get method. It means you are successfully getting the data from the server machine. 304. It means what is the meaning of 304? Not modified correctly. You are trying to update the data, but the data is not updated. Okay. That time, suppose you are trying to update the data from server mission to client mission, but server mission is not performed that operation. The updation is not happened properly. That time, server mission will return the status code 304. If you see the 304 status code means what you will understand, your data is not updated successfully on the server side. Anyone tell me for which methods you will get this status code 304? Not modified correctly, not updated correctly. For which? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Put method.
And in two methods we are performing the update operation.
Put and post. Post.
Catch.
Catch. Put and catch. Whenever you are using the put and catch method, you are trying to update the data using the put and catch method. Okay. If the server is returning the 304 status code means what is the meaning of this 304 status code? It's not updated correctly. 400. Bad request, a resource not available. 400 means bad request, a resource not available. If you are trying to get the data from the server machine, but the data is not available, that resource is not available, that situation you will get the 400. Usually you can see the status code in your in some of the websites. If you are trying to access the website, for example, in the in browsers you are trying to open the some website, you will get the 404 status code, 403 status code, 400, sometimes 400 status code. You will get all the status code. It means 400 means you are trying to get the data from the server machine. If you are trying to get some information from the server machine, but server machine doesn't have this information, that is called as the okay. In that situation, 400 status code will. Anyone tell me which scenario we will get it? For which method? Okay. Anyone tell me which method you will get this status code?
Any method, all methods.
Yeah, except post, all methods. Okay, correct. Penalty. Penalty means internal server problem. It means you are trying to update the data into server machine, or you are trying to create the data into the server machine, or else you are trying to get the data from the server machine, but server is not available. Server has some internal problems. Okay, that time server will return the 503 status code. It means you are trying to access the data from the server machine. Access means it might be delete, or it might be update, it might be create, it might be getting the data. Okay, in either of these operations you are trying to perform, but server machine has some internal problem. That time server machine will return the 503 in status code. 503 means internal server problem. It means by seeing this status code will return along with your response. The response also return. And if it is a 200 status code, 200 status code and response will return. If it is a 201 means 201 status code and response will return. If it is not modified correctly means 304 status code and that exception also will return. 503 means along with this 503 and you will that exception also will return. Usually you will get this 503 internal server problem for the IRCTC website. If you are trying to book the Tatkal ticket, okay, you will get this exception. 503 internal server problem, some exception will come. It means the server has some internal problem. This status code, based on the status code, you will understand how your request is processed onto the server side. This is about the status code. If you understand the status code and the HTTP protocol method, we can easily create the RESTful web services. We are going to create the RESTful web services. Tomorrow, I'll start the first chapter. And this is so far I have explained all the basics. Whatever basics I have explained yesterday and today, these all are the basics. Okay. Tomorrow I'll start the first chapter. Anyone have any doubts? And hello.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow same time 7 to 8. And tomorrow I'll start the actual first chapter. Okay. So far the basics is completed. Whoever is not attended the demo, please stay on the line. And whoever is already attended the demo, you can disconnect.